Hey y'all, so I'm going to deliver some really potent Insta coaching today about how to overcome the cycle of self-sabotage and how to stop pushing away the very things that we most desire, most crave in relationships. But first I want to show you these beautiful Christmas flowers that I have. Aren't they just so special and spectacular? Look at how beautiful they are. They make me so happy. So first of all, I want you to think of a time in your life where you very much craved closeness, connection, reassurance, belonging, intimacy, or validation. If you can think of a time, click yes so that I know you're still with me, and then we'll move on. And it's going to be especially beneficial for this exercise if you can think of a time that you desperately craved one of those things and you didn't get it, or you didn't get it immediately, at least. And now I want you to think of how you communicated that desire, how you acted, and how you responded when you didn't get it at first. And you're likely going to fall into one of three categories. And before I go on to tell you the three main categories, I'd love for you to tell me in your own words how you responded when that desire for validation, closeness, protection, intimacy, belonging was not met at first. All right, so you're gonna get some great psychoeducation in this video. The first two potential responses are dysregulated nervous system responses. The first of those is a collapse, submit, withdraw, and the second is the protest, fight, manipulate. And the third potential response is a regulated nervous system response, a ventral vagal response. We'll get a little bit into what that means, and I will talk about that response towards the end of this video. So the first two dysregulated nervous system responses are both actually manipulative. However, the connotation that we normally have with manipulation means that we're intentionally trying to hurt someone. We're not, most of the time. It's that likely as children, all of our needs were not met easily, and so we had to resort to certain tactics in order to get our needs met. So the first dysregulated nervous system response is the collapse, submit, withdraw, shut down response. And if this is the response that I tend to, what I'm doing is taking myself away in the hopes that by me withdrawing, withholding myself from someone, that will create enough discomfort in their system that they do the thing that I want them to do. For this response, think Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. Slunched over, oh bother, oh bother. Okay. There's many different ways that this withdraw collapse response can look. One of it can look like self-negation. So, I didn't really deserve to have you around me anyways. I knew that I wasn't good enough for you to really love me anyways. Or it can look like going completely cold, literally turning that cold shoulder to somebody and not talking to them, withholding your language, withholding your emotion, just going dead. Or it can look like denying our own wants or needs. So, I didn't want you around anyways. I don't care. And this is a form of dissociation. We're dissociating from our bodies, from our vulnerability, from our desires. So any of these forms of the collapse, withdraw, shut down response are a parasympathetic nervous system response from the dorsal branch of the vagus nerve. And again, this is a survival response that likely came from having unmet needs as a child. If you're a child who isn't able to get their needs met, then the dorsal nerve is going to shut your system down so that you don't have to feel that. You don't have to constantly feel that depletion. You don't have to feel that abuse. You don't have to feel that neglect. Okay, so moving on to the second dysregulated nervous system response, and that is the protest fight response. Okay, so think child throwing a temper tantrum, raging against it. No! Insulting, blaming, criticizing, exerting lots of energy to try to get that person to feel so uncomfortable that they do give you what you want. So this response is a sympathetic nervous system response. This is the fight response. Your system goes into overdrive to try to get your needs met. So whether it's the dorsal response, the collapse response, or the sympathetic nervous system fight response, either way, it's one nervous system trying to create such discomfort in another nervous system so that this nervous system can get what it needs to regulate. And this is probably because as a child, you had a manipulative parent or authority figure that created discomfort in you for them to get their way. So that's what you learned. It's because you grew up around dysregulated nervous systems that were either in a dorsal response or a sympathetic response. Nervous systems that did not know how to self-regulate and relied upon other nervous systems to self-regulate. So if your response to not getting your needs met were one of the first two responses, please do not shame yourself. You were not taught how to self-regulate your nervous system, and your nervous system going into dorsal or sympathetic protected you, kept you safe, kept you alive. It was the only way that you knew how to get your needs met. And that doesn't mean that you can't relearn new ways that are more nourishing to your nervous system to get your needs met. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So although as a child, the only way that you knew to get your needs met was to have a dysregulated nervous system because that's what felt like home, that's where you belonged because everybody around you had a dysregulated nervous system. As an adult, likely when your nervous system goes into dysregulation as an attempt to get your needs met, the people from whom you want those needs to be met, their nervous system goes into dysregulation by being around you, and they feel that and they're like, ooh, I don't like that. So they are going to pull away, and you are going to get the opposite of what it is that you truly want. And your fight or flight mechanism is likely going to tell you that you just need to go into more dysregulation to get your needs met, which is only going to result in you having even less of what you truly want and need. This is the self-sabotage piece. Or there are those that are not going to pull away. They are going to start caretaking. They're going to see, oh no, you're really not okay. Oh my gosh, you're so dysregulated. Let me come take care of you. And although it may feel like you're getting what you want, you're not really, because still your nervous system is not learning how to co-regulate. And you still are dependent upon that cycle of going into despair or shut down in order to get what you need. And I'll just throw this in there for those of you who are familiar with attachment theory. So the first response, the collapse withdrawal, maps onto you if you tend towards avoidant attachment. And the second response, the protest, tantrum, fight response, maps more closely onto the anxious attachment response. Okay, so let's take a deep breath. This has been a lot so far. And before I get into the regulated nervous system response, the secure attachment response, I'd love to hear if anybody has any questions or reflections for me at this point. And if you were able to identify with one of the first two responses, I'd love to hear that. Okay, so the third possible response that we all can learn is the ventral vagal response. This is the healthy, balanced response of social engagement. Okay, so let's think about riding a horse. If you're on a horse and you are in such fear that you are constantly pulling back on the reins, the horse isn't going to go anywhere, right? Or if you're on a horse and you're not using the reins at all, it's possible that the horse is going to gallop. Neither are the ideal situation. So the pulling back on the reins, that's the dorsal response. The horse galloping, that's the sympathetic response. We want a combination of the two, and that's the ventral vagal response. In either of the other two dysregulated responses, when our body habitually goes into those responses, there are so many chemicals that get released in our body that it can take up to 20 minutes for us to get back to homeostasis. But if we're able to maintain a ventral vagal response, we don't allow ourselves to go into one of the ventral vagal response. Once we know how to do it, only takes milliseconds, and it doesn't involve these sorts of chemical reactions. Therefore, we can much more easily make micro adjustments. So this is the skilled horse rider that is aptly controlling the reins of the horse and making micro adjustments between activation and calming, between sympathetic response and dorsal response. Neither sympathetic nor dorsal are bad. We want to learn how to balance them. So the ventral vagal response is the response of secure attachment. And it is a beautiful, delicate balance between self-regulation and co-regulation. We do not want to sacrifice one or the other, because when we sacrifice self-regulation for co-regulation, that's when we go into anxious attachment. And when we sacrifice co-regulation for self-regulation, that's when we go into avoidant. We want neither. We want secure attachment. We want the ventral vagal response. Are y'all with me? Which requires, first of all, recognizing that my system is hardwired to go into dysregulation in order to get my needs met, and my body truly feels that if I do not go into dysregulation, I will not get my needs met. So before we can get to secure attachment, we need to really hold compassionate space for when our system is freaking out, thinking that it has to dysregulate in order to get its needs met. And it's about taking full responsibility for our reactions. So although the reason why we react the way we do is because of what's happened to us in the past, that's not happening right now. And it is now our job to take full responsibility for those reactions. So it is the art of being willing to vulnerably reveal what is happening within us to whomever is involved without revealing it to manipulate or to try to get our way, revealing for the purpose of revealing and being seen. So it's first having the awareness of our nervous system's tendency and then calling ourselves out. So for example, saying, wow, I feel really frustrated, disappointed, unsafe, sad that you're not able to show up for me, give me the validation that I want, give me the commitment that I want, whatever it is. And I'm noticing my system is wanting to take myself away from you as a way to punish you for not giving me what I want. Or, wow, I really notice that my system is wanting to yell at you. It's wanting to really diffuse this energy. It's wanting to throw a tantrum, criticize you, make you miserable in order to try to get its way. And then saying, and I recognize that that's not actually going to give me what I want in the long term. So what I would love from you is some reassurance. I'd love for you to tell me that you love me, that I'm important to you. I'd love for you to hold me, give me a hug. And if you're unable or unwilling to do that, then I know what there is for me to do. I know what to give to myself. So the ventral vagal response is this delicate balance of holding space for ourselves, doing activities that expand our nervous system, such as taking deep breaths, holding ourselves, journaling, while staying in connection. So not pushing that person away by either taking ourselves away or protesting and yelling at them. Right, so the first two strategies, the collapse or the protest strategy, are means of trying not to hold the intensity of whatever we're feeling. So we either shut down and shut our system off to numb the intensity, or we go into sympathetic fight to try to diffuse the intensity, whereas the ventral vagal is expanding our nervous system to meet the intensity. And this is the beautiful art of willingness, of practicing being willing to feel what is arising in our system without believing that it is somebody else's responsibility, fault, or job to fix. And the beautiful part of this is that every single time we do this, we are rewiring our system to go to the ventral vagal response first. Every time we do this, we are expanding our nervous system to be able to hold more intensity. And by our taking responsibility for regulating our nervous system, we are inviting other nervous systems to come regulate with us, therefore creating more deep connection, more sustainable, secure attachment, and thereby actually, truly getting what we really want and need. what we really want and need is the ability to co-regulate while self-regulating. And to get there, it requires that we reparent ourselves and that we show up for ourselves and we give ourselves the compassion, forgiveness, acceptance, and understanding that we likely didn't fully receive as children. So I would love to hear from you how this was for you and what you got out of it, and or if you have any additional questions. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're still with me, thank you for being with me for this long.